Welcome to Founder Stories, a show about entrepreneurs, innovators, and their success journeys. I'm your host, Teja Kalwala. Typically, if you meet an Indian guy in the United States, chances are he's either an engineer like me or a doctor. But our guest, Aalok Rathod, became a movie producer. This show is about his company, Uncia Productions. Let's dive in. Hey Alok, how are you?
I'm doing well, Teja. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for coming to the show.
No problem. It's my honor.
Yeah, mine too. So tell me a little bit about your company.
So my company is called Uncia Productions. It's a creative consulting firm based in New York City.
Mhm.
It began only as sort of this experiment to see if we could do storytelling that brings cultures together, something that lies at the intersection of culture and human emotions. So it was initially just a film company. Just we were just making short films, but then it gradually evolved into more media outlets, and now we have short films, documentaries, and podcasts.
That's really interesting. So before we go into more in depth about your company and your journey to get there, w- tell me a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up? How did you come to United States?
Right. So I was born in the state of Gujarat in India. So I'm a Gujarati, and
Mhm.
I come from a very small town called Godhra. You might remember that from 2002 riots, which is not a pleasant way to refer to
Yeah,
your hometown.
yeah.
But unfortunately, that's the only reference I have. Yeah, I was born in that town, and I did my schooling there until 10th grade. And the good thing was that I was born in a family of entrepreneurs. So my grandfather, my uncle, my dad, all of them worked in the family business.
Mhm.
So weekend discussions and dinner table discussions would be around business, about my grandfather talking, how should we grow the business, what are the current issues, how should we hire new people. So unknowingly I was kind of imbibing all of that knowledge. And as a fun exercise, my grandfather would just give me like a bundle of notes to just count, and like, okay,
Mhm.
practice your math on this, like how many notes are there, what is the denomination, and give me the total. uh, which was a fun way for him to just kind of keep me busy. But I was picking up skills like, okay, this is how we're supposed to count, and this is how you put the numbers in calculator. So as a kid, that was a fun experience. And as
Was
time
he
went
able
on,
to trust you?
I mean, he had already done the calculations before, so he knew that, he wouldn't rely on me completely, because I was still in school and learning all this counting stuff. But he would just test me that, okay, are you
Mhm.
able to do it accurately or not? So, and then as time went along, my mother and like other people also got involved in business or started something of their own. So I was always kind of in that entrepreneurial environment. Like people were always starting stuff and growing stuff and abandoning stuff. So I have seen sort of the good and the bad side of owning a business.
Mhm.
So I'm very comfortable in that space because I've seen so many people who are very close to me do that over the years. So then I moved to Mumbai in 2006 to pursue.
So when you said your family business, what business is this?
So my family business is into distribution of electronic goods.
Gotcha.
Um, so like anything from refrigerator, television, computer, water purifier, we buy it from big companies and pass it
Hmm.
down the supply chain.
Okay.
So that is the business. It's still going on and growing. So I moved to Mumbai in 2006. My entire family moved actually for higher education, and in there I just pursued commerce, which is like one of the three streams that are offered. And being Mumbai being like the center of business in general kind of gave me again that exposure of how businesses are built. And I think after I finished my undergrad in India, I got hired by JP Morgan for their investment banking research role, which was fun. But a word of caution to anyone that's out there, that if you are going into investment banking as your first job, then it's going to be intense. Like there is
Mm.
nothing that will prepare you for those long hours and intense deadlines. But it's a good learning experience because you are talking to bankers from all over the world. You have a high performance team and they are always churning out high levels of productivity. So it's a good learning experience. But I think along the way, I just felt, so from JP Morgan, I moved to my family business, worked there for about 3 or 4 years. And then I just felt this void that I need to gain more skills. Like, this, I was sort of feeling that I've reached this saturation point where I'm not able to understand the complexity of business. So then I felt, okay, I need to move to the US and gain some higher education in business. So that's when I moved here in 2016. So I've been here for about 4.5 years.
So when you said you moved here, were you pursuing a course or?
Yeah, so the initial idea was to pursue MBA, but then I ended up doing innovation and entrepreneurship at Harvard. So essentially, it was just a way for me to just take different courses and work towards something that is like innovation and entrepreneurship. So I took courses pretty much everywhere around Harvard. So like HBS online, and Harvard College, Harvard Business School, Harvard Law School. So all these courses were like spread across these different schools, and I just did them, which collectively turned into innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and that's how we kind of met with the HB at Score program. That's
Yeah.
that's really good. That's really good experience if you want to get your foot into a business environment.
Yep, I agree.
So you worked in investment banking, and before that, your family has an electronic distribution business. And what you're doing now is content creation and production. How how are those two interlinked, and how did that pivot happen from those two completely different fields?
So there is nothing common, so as to say, between finance and media production, because media production again is a very technical, very specific kind of field where you need to know the specifics to be delivering good content, which I didn't have, of course. So this was in 2016 when I read this story about this Japanese musician who fell from grace because he had been lying to everyone about him being deaf, because he was born in like post World War II Japan, where his parents were affected by the nuclear bombings by the US. And so that's why he was born deaf, but he still makes amazing music. And over the years, he has won every honor, every award you could imagine for music. And then to see that when he had achieved everything in his life, towards like, in early to mid 60s, this truth comes out and absolutely destroys his career. So, and it is more shocking was that his best friend, who was an accomplice in all of this, who knew that he was not deaf but pretending to be, was the one who broke the news. So I was just thinking that what could have happened between these two guys, that one guy finally decided to turn on this person, and essentially he got discarded from the society. So I just kept thinking about it, and I felt maybe I should make like a short film on it. So that's when I reached out to a few Japanese students, and they said that, yeah, we are aware of the story, but yeah, we would like to do it. Sure, why not? So I just hired my classmates to be the actors, because one of the guys spoke Japanese, being a native Japanese person, and played piano, like very
Oh
good
wow!
piano. So I'm like, this is all I need, right? Because that guy who
Yeah.
fell from grace also played piano. So I'm like, okay, you are the perfect cast for this. So it began with that.
So if we back up a little bit, at this point you were at Harvard,
Yeah.
and
So at Harvard, I was again pursuing innovation and entrepreneurship related courses, because that was my intent. I wanted to go back into business with more knowledge. Uh, as it turns out, though, a German friend of mine at that time, she told me that, all these stories that you're sharing about your experiences and these events in your life, you're a very passionate storyteller. So maybe you should consider storytelling in some form. And I shrugged it off, saying like, no, I don't know anything about filmmaking or any other forms of media. I don't think I'm a creative person. I'm more like a numbers person, charts, graphs, analytics is my thing. And she's like, yeah, but give it a shot. It might not be as bad as you think. And if you don't enjoy the process, you can go back to pursuing what you are pursuing. So she already had a film shot and she needed some funds to do the post production. So I helped her with that and I became the producer because of it. But that movie blew up. It got, I think, 35 awards. It won 35 awards all over the world.
Wow.
And next thing you know, I was going to, red carpet events and being interviewed by members of the press and going to after parties. And I was just enjoying being a producer. I'm like, this is great. I just put in some money and I'm getting this fame that I never had in my life for anything that I did so far.
So this project was originally just to help out your friend and not out of much passion for it, right? Or
no, because even the project that she had made, because it was already made, there was no scope for me to give any creative inputs. And even if there were, as I said, I didn't think I was very creative or I knew filmmaking enough to suggest that, hey, you should do it this way. So the film was a very artsy kind of art house cinema kind of a concept. It was a romantic story but weaved into magical realism kind of thing, which, as you know, being a non-media person, I didn't understand. Now I do, of course, but back then it seemed very abstract. Like, yes, there are these lovers who meet and there's this concept of time, a lot of symbolism. I don't know what it means, but yeah, if you need help, I can produce it. So it just began with that.
so what is the name of this film?
It's called Between Seconds.
Okay. And when this film released, I assume this is not a theatrical release.
No. So the thing is, we went to a lot of film festivals and it's a short film. So it's, I think, 22, 25 minutes, I think something like that. And so we did go to a lot of film festivals and that's where we won all these awards. But I think we found a distribution deal with some TV network in Italy. Because the filmmaker, being Italian German, she had connections there, so she was able to find it. But yeah, we don't have a theatrical release because it's a short film.
So did this generate any revenue that further propelled you to pursue this path?
Yeah, it did. I mean, of course, we found distribution and there was a revenue sharing agreement, so that was great. But I think what got me more interested in this was that, let's pursue this. Like, if this was what it means to do storytelling, I have a story that I would like to share, which was about this Japanese person. And so that's what kept me going. I'm like, okay, it's not taking too much time. I can do it in summer when things are slow. And, it's a short film. So it's not like I need a huge setup.
Right.
So it began with that. And that's why I kept going.
So is that when you started your Uncia productions before you produced this Japanese film?
I think it was after that because the thing is, initially I was just testing the waters. I was being an independent producer and seeing that, okay, do I need to do this full time? Because, to incorporate a company, you have to have certain kind of legal paperwork done. So I wasn't sure. And then, I was still testing waters. So Uncia Productions was formally incorporated in March 2018.
Okay.
But from 2016, I think June of 2016 to March of 2018, I was an independent producer. I wasn't sure if I want to turn this into a full-time thing because, and there were a lot of considerations of having a company in the US and, what kind of partnership structure, who would want to be be my partner and things like that. And even if there
Mhm.
is like taxation paperwork and a lot of other things that you need to take care of.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, and I understand. And just for the record, you're not a citizen, right? For the United
no,
States.
no,
Okay, yeah,
I'm
that
not.
makes it a lot more difficult to start a company.
Yeah, so but it happened in 2018. My one of my friends, who's also an entrepreneur, was my classmate at Harvard. We were taking a course called Judgment and Decision Making at Harvard Law School, and that's where I became friends with him. And I asked him like, "Hey, you are an entrepreneur, right?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, I want to start my own company, but in the media space, I don't know much about media space, but I need someone reliable who could, help me with like setting up the company and be a partner. And he's like, yeah, sure, why not? I can help you with that. So he did help me with that, and he's still the co-founder, and we
Hmm.
still take important decisions collectively, where I don't take any decision without discussing with him. So yeah, so I'm glad that he put his trust in me, and then it's been now going from strength to strength since then.
That's really good. How did you come up with the name?
So the name is an interesting thing. Because I was hanging out with a lot of Italians initially when I was making these movies and funding my initial movie projects. A lot of them were Italian, so they spoke a lot of Italian words, and I think I was researching something like I need an Italian word for my company's name. So then I felt that, okay, what does my company do? It makes short films. All right. Then I put in some math on that. That okay, uh, the short films are typically 1/12 of the duration of a feature film.
Hmm.
So mathematically, the expression would be 1/12, right? So then I felt, is there a word for the 12th part in Italian? So I did some research and found that the word ansia, or as it's said in Italian, ancia, is the 12th part. So
Wow.
that sounded nice to me. I'm like, yeah.
That's
So that's how the name came to be. And Italian friends say that ancia is turned into ounce, which is then
Mhm.
like the measurement of uh,
uh,
different things. So ounces are measured in 12 parts, I think, something like that.
mhm.
So they told me that ancha is the word that precedes into ounce and things
Wow.
like that. I'm like,
I
yeah, that checks
never
out.
knew that.
Yeah. So, but because ancha is a difficult word to pronounce for most Americans and Indians, so we have sort of standardized it a little bit by saying ansia. So
Mhm.
that's how
It's
it's called.
unique too. It's really unique.
Yeah. So that's the origin story of the name.
So at this point, were you producing by your own, or how were you raising funds to do these movies?
So it was a combination of the money that we had made from previous projects that we were reinvesting in
Hmm.
newer projects. And at the same time, we were fundraising through crowdfunding platforms. So
Gotcha.
Indiegogo is where we would put in the project details, and just I would just reach out to people in my connection. And again, that was an unexpected um, thing, because I felt, who's gonna put money into my project. But as it turns out, a lot of people were excited by the idea.
Hmm.
A lot of people made like few big donations, which helped us get it done. So that's how it began. We just crowdfunded these projects.
Wow. And do these people get any returns after the release?
Yeah, so there were different perk levels, which meant like if you are donating $5, you get a social media shout out for that
Hmm.
contribution. And then like if it is $10, then you get a signed poster. If it's $25, then you also receive like the first access to the movie after
Hmm.
it's done. And if you put in $500, then you become a co-producer, so you get the
Gotcha.
credit, you are invited to the screenings, and then any profits that we make from that movie, to the extent of your contribution, goes back to you. So $500 in comparison to the overall budget is your share of the film that you own. So yeah, two of the guys actually came on board as producers and helped us get done. And yeah, I was one day I woke up and I saw $500 donation and I was confused. I reached out to the guy. Did you okay? First of all, did someone steal your card and play this prank on you? And if not, he said, like, no, my card is with me. Nobody stole it. He said that, did you mean to donate $5 or $50 and accidentally did it 500? It's like, no, I'm positive I put in 500. I'm like, oh, hey, we have never met, but I think you are my new best friend now because you just put it. So it's that's how it happened. And he's actually one of the HBS Online co-student participants.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Okay. So how is the company doing now, especially in the light of the pandemic?
So yeah, it was difficult because the thing is that we used all these projects, the movie projects that have won all these awards, to offer video production services to brands and individuals, which means we would say that, hey, we have produced all these films that have won all these awards, and if you want something like this, like a showreel for yourself, or a founder's vision video, or an advertisement, or training videos that needs to be put on video, we could do it for you. So that was our approach, and we had a lot of clients in New York and New Jersey area, and things were looking great before pandemic. But of course, once the pandemic hit, we had this moment where we lost, I think, 85% of the revenues in 2.5 months, because everybody either chose to froze their project, like their contract, or just said that, we just don't have enough funds to sustain this level of marketing activity anymore. More so because we don't know when things are going back to normal.
Right.
So things were so uncertain at that time that most companies either put it on freeze or pulled out their contracts. And we understood, so there was no legal ramification as such that, hey, this contract says 2 years, but why are you pulling out after 6 months? Because it was a difficult time for everyone, and it was not written in contract that in event of a pandemic you'll stay up for the contract. So it was fair on their side, and we understood. But we also knew that we had to pivot now. We have to find something else to keep the company going. So at that time, we only had one podcast called The Affiliators, which again features stories of people who have had successful career, and they talk about their journey of how that happened. So it was a side project that I was doing to keep me creatively occupied between movie projects. But then I began looking at it more seriously. So I reached out to people, asked for their feedback. They said, hey, how about you do that in Arabic and Spanish, because there are more listeners coming up from these regions who are now listening to podcasts. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Someone said, how about you focus something on relationships? So that was one thing. Some people said, how about you do some serious research intensive kind of podcast, which is like a new learning, like each episode is a new learning experience for someone. So I just took in all this feedback, and we felt that, okay, we can now, there is this demand for this podcast, which means we can create them and we will find an audience. So we did that. So we began producing more and more podcasts, and that's the strategic shift, like the pivot that we did, that, okay, until films can go back, let's just use podcasts as developing another means of generating revenue through sponsorships, and we can sustain ourselves that way. So of course it's not a lot of money, because again, you need to have a certain number of audience to earn big bucks, but it's good enough for us to survive until the video production resumes. But now we have 6 podcasts going on, which means we are really exploiting what people need out there in the marketplace, and just offering them what they're looking for. So yeah, we have stayed busy in pandemic more than anything, but it's been the good kind of busy, not the bad kind of busy.
That's really great, man. I hope things will go back to normal this year, because I think we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope your video productions resume.
Yeah, keeping fingers crossed for that.
So just looking back at your story, is there anything you would have done differently?
I would have, yes. So first of all, I don't have any regrets in the sense that everything that I've done so far has taught me something, be it good experiences or bad. So I wouldn't change that because I am sort of the sum product of all my experiences combined so far. But I would say now that I'm more knowledgeable, I would have chosen to workshop my ideas a little bit more before putting the money and effort behind them. Uh, because when you're initially driven with that passion and this burning desire to tell a story, you don't spend enough time in pre-production, like testing idea, making changes, tweaking things here and there. So when we were filming this movie called The Doorbell, it was a very complicated project because we had a camera team flying in from Canada to Mumbai. The actors were from Mumbai, but the movie was in English, so the dialogues were in English. And I had never looked for a shooting space in Mumbai before. So I had to go around, find that, and then I had to extend the budget because the office space we were looking for was reasonably like priced, but again we needed more time. So being a producer and being also an actor, because one of the actors dropped out a week before filming, so I took
Is
my
there
small
anything you
role
were
to
not
save the
doing?
sleeping is what I was not doing.
Damn.
So so it's like on the set you are working 13 hours, 15 hours I was on my feet all day because either I'm directing or acting or handling the production, taking care of catering, food and stuff like that, still making sure we finish the filming for the hours that are allotted to us. So yeah, it was very complicated, and it felt like I did not take much time up front to plan these things. I just sort of jumped into things and figured it out along the way, which is not the best way to work in production. So yeah, I believe I should have taken more time in pre-production to hash out things a bit more. So yeah, that's the only thing I would advise myself on.
It's really great, Alok. It's been a pleasure talking to you. That's such an inspiring story.
Thank you so much, Teja, for giving me this platform to share my story. And yeah, wishing you all the luck with your project. It looks very exciting, and I'm looking forward to other guests on your show as well.
All right. Thank you, Alok.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
Teja.
day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.